After helping those that could recover their physical bodies, Shiro glanced to the side and saw a small group of people that seems to be okay with getting a robotic replacement for now, while others were a little hesitant. Before I proceed with this procedure, is there anything you want to ask? Shiro asked as she could tell that they have some hesitation in their eyes. Yes, since this new body is metal, is there a chance for it to get hacked? What if we lose control? Can you promise not to take control from us? A girl asked as Shiro nodded her head. I can make a vow if you want. There is little to no chance of being able to hack the body, but if they tried, I would know. You won't lose control, and while I can't promise that I won't override control if the need arises, it is only if you were to use this tech against me or harm Mrs. City. That is a backup. I will vow to make sure my word is true. Shiro smiled as the girl furrowed her brows before nodding. Watching Shiro vow about everything that she said, the girl sighed in relief. Since Shiro was another queen, it was only natural that they had their own thoughts about her trustworthiness. After making the vow, she started the construction on their body after healing their soul, getting them to remember what their body was like. Shiro made sure it was as accurate as possible. After all, there would be some problems if that wasn't the case. For example, if she was to put the soul of a person into a machine body with 4 limbs and brainwash them to think that, eventually the soul would realize something was off and seek to correct it. Back in Arya, there were plenty of experiments when it came to moving the conscious. While it wasn't to the level of moving souls, it wasn't far. Their conscious would be placed in a new body and control it as if it was their own. As she was making some final adjustments to each of their components to make sure they feel normal to the wearer, she couldn't help but wonder why she wasn't given a skill. I suppose it's not that much different from some of my other skills, she mused to herself, glancing over to her giant stack of skills blocking her sight. She figured that she should probably see if she can fuse them together. If she does, many of the effects would overlap and might even get stronger. However, the problem was some effects may even disappear, which was something she didn't want. Name: Shiro. Race: Spirit Demigod. Title: Expert Monster. 13-029/100-000 Humans Killed. Fratricide. Creator of the Frozen Hell series. Incomplete. Creator of Style Azura's Path. Seeker of Truths. Revolutionary. Celestial Empress EX. Benevolent Saint EX. Error Code. Genocide. One of a kind. Virtue of Fortitude. Young Demigod. Goddess of Protection. Merciful Goddess. Young Goddess. 50% boost currently. Leader of Asharia. Tainted Shell. Realm Breaker. Level: 765. Class: Nanotech Demigoddess. Demigod. HP: 109,375,000/109,375,000,000. MP: 376. 250,000,000/376,250,000,000,000. STR: 625 million. VIT: 710 million. INT: 2,150 million. AGI: 730 million. DEX: 605 million. DEF: 515 million. Unassigned points: 0. Attunements: Cosmic Ice, Tier 6. Apocalyptic Lightning, Tier 6. Stygian Steel, Tier 6. Astral Rift, Tier 6. Augmented with Calamity's Will. Void Star, Tier 6. Celestial Star, Tier 6. Aspect of Fire, Tier 7. Boreal Wind, Tier 6. Tectonic Quake, Tier 6. Aspect of Water, Tier 7. Aspect of Life, Tier 7. Tier: Nanotech, Tier 7 Demigod. Skills: Error, Extraction, Nanotech Demigoddess. Elemental Breath, Celestial Mirage, Force of Elements. Demigod Raiment, Tier 6 Element Magic. Rift Strider EX, Demigoddess Domain. Demigod Skill: Rebirth, Legendary Elemental Mastery, Spirit Assistance EX. Divine Court Appointment. Demigoddess Blessing, Shared Burden. Nanotech Engineering Tier 6. Analysis, True Spirit Nature, Divine Gardens, Divine Presence. Divinity of Nanobots, March of the Goddess, Divine Insight of God. Protection of the Goddess, Boon of the Demigoddess. Frozen Hell Series: Frozen Slumber, Azure Hell Fire, Borealis Lance, Frozen Chandelier. Ancient Healing Arts: Fire of Life, Grace. Path of Ascendance, Phantom Path, Celestial Path. Pandora's Requiem, Reaper, Limit Break. Origin, War Saint, Divine Enchantment. Current Blessings: Asteria, Athena, Aphrodite, Ares, Artemis, Hades, Hermes, Poseidon, Nyx. World-class magic. Requiem of the Dead. Grand Support Class Magic. Requiem of the Demigoddess. Origin Spells. Time Flux. Other. Mini-map. Inspection. Disguise. Combust. Heavenly Constellation. Aurora. Chimera Arts. Hollow Deceit. Kitoma. Divine Language. Wrath of Stars. Eyes of the Gorgon. Miracle. Sigil of Night. Encroaching Darkness. Skill Scholar. Item Master. Limit Focus. Blessing of Chaos. Soul Siphon. Divine Runic Needles. Devour. I might be able to see if I can mix the skills from Pandora's Requiem together. Who knows if they'll become broken. It has been a while since she had last used them, so she wasn't sure what would happen now. But one thing was sure, and that she was looking forward to it. Thinking about it, she decided to save for the next time she called forth the system. Plus, she also needed to ask Administrator 4 about the gift he sent. That, and also she needed to thank him before creating more mess for him. Shaking her head, she finished creating the physical bodies for those that wanted it. Once she was done, she stood up and walked over to Misu. Do you want me to convert the city now, or should I do it later? If I do it now, I can use some mana to teleport the whole of Asharia here to connect the two cities together. That way the Lightning Queen won't be able to launch an attack. Shiro offered as Misa thought about it. Right now, Asharia consists of two cities, the main one called Asharia, and the second city governed by Aram. If they were to add all of the cities to Asharia, the mana needed for everything would increase dramatically. But after what Shiro had told her about the crystals, Misa figured that it was probably only possible thanks to the crystals. Alright, if we connect all of the cities, it can probably be considered a country with the size it covers. Misa smiled. True. If you take me to the anchor, I'll start making some adjustments now. By the end of the day, I should be able to make this a flying city. Hearing this, Misu nodded and led her toward the center of the city. In the center was a single building that was surrounded by formations. Opening a path, Misu revealed the crystal anchor within the center. Without saying anything, Shiro walked up and placed her hand on the surface. Closing her eyes, she wanted to determine how much mana it was producing first so that she could estimate the output. Surprisingly, most of the output was already being consumed by keeping this mini undead in the city. There was barely any mana left for anything else, and Shiro understood that to make this into a flying city, her anchor was going to be doing most of the work. If we heal and revive the undead, it would make it easier to convert the city to a floating one. But we don't have that capability right now. Rather than doubling down on weapons, it was probably better to improve mobility of the city. Shiro thought to herself. Taking her hand off the crystal, she placed it on the ground, and a magic circle started to materialize on the ground. One by one, the layers started to stack up as liquid mana flowed out before condensing into a crystal next to Mrs. Anchor. You might want to warn people about the floating city while I make some preparations, Shiro said as Misu paused. When Shiro tells you to warn people, the shock of the city ripping from the ground was probably pretty big. Immediately rushing out of the building, Misu called Essel and had everyone prepare. After Misu had left, Shiro slammed her hand into the ground. Nanobots started to dig through the ground as the framework of the city slowly appeared. While this was happening, it was as though an earthquake had struck. Looking around in a panic, the citizens of Misu's city grabbed onto each other while Misu had her subordinates inform everyone of what's happening. After a few short moments, the shaking stopped, which confused Mrs. since this didn't seem like what Shiro had warned her about. However, her thoughts were dashed immediately after hundreds of Tier 6 magic circles appeared in the sky. Asterisk bang, ripping the entire city from the ground. A good chunk of land followed suit as loose pieces of rock fell to the ground. With the rapid rising of the city, many couldn't stay on their feet as they collapsed to the ground. Summoning a skeletal wyvern under her, Misu quickly flew above the city and watched as the map had completely changed from one spell. Goodness, Misa muttered as she couldn't help but shake her head. With the city now flying in the sky, Shiro closed her eyes and made sure all of its functions were acting as normal. Seeing that nothing was wrong, she curved her lips into a smile and clasped her hands together. Asterisk boom. Above the Tier 6 circles that kept the city in the sky, another magic circle appeared. This time it was tens of times bigger than they were seeing. What the? Misa muttered as she glanced up. Sensing the mana, she widened her eyes and realized that Shiro was bringing the entirety of Asharia to their current location so that her city could fuse with the main body. I suppose this is similar to a summoning spell. Shiro thought with a humorous chuckle, as she could probably call this spell something along the lines of city summoning. Descent of Asharia. After all, it was just as much of a mobile fortress as it is a city for her people. Bringing it to a war was not so illogical, since it could be used as a giant AoE cannon. Little by little, the citizens of Misu's city could see a shadow begin to cover them, as the bottom of Asharia could be seen. At first it was as small as a small shadow, but soon it began to cover everything. Seeing the size of the city, some felt like they were dreaming, since they didn't think something like this was even possible. Nantian, I'll leave the documents and registration to you. Have some of our staff help them get used to the technology. They don't need to sign up, but if they want to use Asharia's facilities, it's a must. Even if it isn't a permanent registration, give them a trial account that can be confirmed after a week, Shiro said as Nantian nodded. All right, I suppose this trial account can only be opened once. Actually, give them something like a guest pass. They're able to use some of Asharia's services, but not all, since they're classified as guests rather than registered members. Give them the basics, but the high-end stuff is reserved, Shiro replied after thinking about it for a moment. All right. Nodding his head, Nantian teleported away for now, so that he could take care of all the moving documents needed. If he didn't keep on top of everything, it would transform into a giant stack, and that was something he didn't want. If he was forced to deal with that giant stack, he wasn't sure how long it'll take him. After Nantian had left, Shiro stretched her body and sat down by the two anchors that now acted as a battery for this city. Even though she said two, most of the burden was placed on her own anchor, spending the rest of the day helping with connecting the two cities and creating bodies for those that decided to accept. Shiro finished the day, making pretty good progress with helping Misu. One city was now connected properly. All its inhabitants had their souls healed and given new bodies, except for a few who were still unsure. However, Shiro didn't mind, as there wasn't much difference since it was just a placeholder for now. She'll grant them their original bodies in the future. There wasn't much else for her to do, so it was just a case of going from city to city. It didn't take too much divine energy for her to heal their souls, so she figured that she'll be able to do 2 more cities by the end of the day. However, with her making 3 anchors in quick succession, her stats received a pretty sizable penalty for now, though she was still quite ahead compared to other queens and even empresses. With the other cities, she saw that many were dubious about her mechanical replacement, and only a few wanted to give it a try. But after seeing the city of Asharia for themselves along with the other citizens from Misu's city, they decided to go with the new body. The suspicions around her were dispelled after they experienced what Asharia was like, much to her relief. Unfortunately, Misu had to close down her store and reopen it under a different name. After all, she didn't want her citizens to see their queen working with a shop name like that. Instead of Mrs. Fantasy 100% Guarantee Detective Agency, it was now Undead Detective Agency and was located in the center of Asharia, where the main tower was. Sitting by her desk, Shiro tapped her finger on the table. She was currently looking at the power requirement and the power output of the city. From the way things were going, it didn't seem like she'd be able to sustain the final few cities with just one of her anchors. Misu had shown her their position on the map as well as the size. Unless she forgoes defenses for those cities, just one anchor won't work. I think I might have to rely on the crystals now, Shiro thought to herself with a slight frown. Nantian, how are the applications for the move to the North Pole? Shiro asked, as the faster they understand the crystals and the egg, the better. That way she can use the crystals without worry. I'm trying, but it's been rather busy. I'd say the applications are around 30% done. They won't be finished for another 3 days, and that's not including the fact that the research base isn't done. We need to prepare equipment for them, or else they'll freeze to death. Nantian shook his head. Hearing this, Shiro sat back and frowned slightly. Perhaps I might have to think about signing a contract with Kiona early. If she doesn't sign the contract, I'm not keen on having her anchor near my main city. Shiro sighed. Thinking about this, the other fastest way would definitely be to just level up. The faster she gets to level 1000, the better. That way, she can help Cyrodiil in Rokarn's invasion and Kiona with her Empress problem. Shaking her head, she decided to help Nantian out with some paperwork before sleeping. ####. Waking up the next morning, Shiro continued to help the people out by healing their souls as well as giving them new bodies. Continuing for a while, it was finally time for Misu's main city. As Misu teleported them over, Shiro could tell that this was the same coordinates as the one she had seen in the future. Only this time the city was much smaller and less developed, which made sense considering how many people Misu had to squeeze in here before. This is the last one. There is a dungeon still available here, but it isn't anything impressive. It's connected to the chaotic era of my own garden, and the enemies are roughly level 300 to 400. Misu informed while walking through the castle. Leading them down a flight of stairs, she revealed the giant neon green crystal that had a dungeon gate not too far away. The crystal was many times bigger than the ones in the other city, and Shiro could tell that the mana generated by this was much bigger. Placing her hand on the surface, she wanted to check the output when she noticed a huge anomaly. With how much mana this thing was producing, it should be able to easily sustain the need of this city as well as many others. And yet, it was barely scraping by. Furrowing her brows, Shiro glanced back. Is there anything that's requiring most of the mana here? Shiro asked as Misu paused, glancing back for a moment. She gestured for Essel and Nantion to leave them alone for a second. Acknowledging this, Essel stepped out and Nantion did the same. Setting up a barrier just in case, Misu took a deep breath. I didn't expect you to notice that, but yes, most of the mana being generated in this is directed elsewhere. I cannot say where it's going, but it's helping someone important. They require lots of mana, so I've been giving all the mana I can every day without harming my citizens. Misu admitted as she looked up at the crystal. I see. Do you need any help with that? Since this place is rather concealed, I should be able to set this as a normal city for now. One that didn't need to be connected to Asharia, so that my anchor can act as a battery for you. Shiro offered. While she may not know what it's helping, she knows that Misu was able to survive quite a while in the future, which means whatever this anchor is helping right now helped her back. Plus, I can make it so that it generates a little bit of divine energy. It's like mana but more condensed and should help you out greatly. Hearing this, Misu paused in shock as she didn't expect her anchor to be able to provide divine energy. Thinking about it, she blushed slightly and coughed. Can you make an anchor for me, please? Misu said quietly as Shiro chuckled. Sure thing. Shiro nodded with a smile and started construction on the anchor. Even though she made it sound easy, the construction of an anchor that can produce divine energy was far from easy. Even now, the only reason she even had an anchor that could do that was due to it being her main anchor, one that represented her participation of this event. If her anchor is destroyed, she'll be disqualified. While she may not be dead, she wouldn't be able to win either. A slow descent to destruction. Shaking her head free of the negative thoughts, Shiro tried to finish the anchor. The main thing that was different when she was making her own anchor was that back then she had forcefully raised her level to the realm of gods and used Tier 7 magic circle to build her anchor. While she may not have access to that, she now understood how to use their runes. If combined properly, it was akin to a Tier 8 magic circle. There was also the case of supplying divine energy for it to harmonize with the mana. She wasn't sure if the passive production of divine energy was linked to her being the first to create a divine anchor or not. So she wasn't sure if this was the only thing she needed to do. Gaia, are any of you able to tell me something that I might want to know before I begin? Just so that I can make some early adjustments. Shiro called out since she knew that they were watching whenever they could, which was most of the time. While she was waiting for their response, Misu could only look at her in confusion since she recognized the name. Gaia is the name of a deity. Why is Shiro calling out to her? With such familiarity too. There's no way, right? She thought to herself since it seemed almost illogical, but looking back at it, it indeed possible. After all, she was in a similar situation. Waiting a short moment, Shiro got her reply. Goddess Gaia states that it is indeed possible. If you use their crests as one of the catalysts for making the anchor, then you'll be able to infuse some of their own divine energy into the core. However, you have to be careful since it cannot hold too much divine energy, unlike your main anchor. Overload it with divine energy, and the anchor may just explode on you. If you want to make it so that it produces divine energy by itself, you'll have to infuse a small part of your soul. For gods, the physical body doesn't hold as much importance as the soul. The divine energy nourishes the soul, and the soul produces divine energy. When you become a god, it is your soul transcending to a new state of power, and naturally, your body follows. Is that so? So if I use your crests, the anchor will hold divine energy, but won't produce it. If I use my own soul, it will produce divine energy, but only small amounts daily. Shiro asked. Goddess Gaia nods her head in agreement. She states that you can use both options at once. While your anchor producing divine energy, her crests can provide for a short while before expiring. Reading this, Shiro nodded her head and closed her eyes. However, before she started, she paused. Gaia, I have Nyx's blessing, but I don't think I have yours. Goddess Gaia pauses in shock and disbelief. She shouts out about how she can't believe she hasn't given you her blessings yet. Surprised that it was just a short message, Shiro blinked her eyes when a tier 8 magic circle suddenly appeared in front of her. Divine energy filled the room as Misu stepped back in shock as she didn't expect a god to just appear like this. She knew that materializing yourself before the second part of the New Age was ridiculous since the backlash was not something an average god can handle. But since it was Gaia, a primordial deity, she would be fine, even if the backlash is bigger than normal. You know, you didn't have to materialize yourself. Aren't you worried about backlash? Shiro asked as Gaia transformed herself so that she was roughly the same size as Shiro. Well, if I gave you my blessing from up there, it would only be a standard one. Naturally, I can't just give you a standard blessing. Let's see. It's been a while since you have received a blessing, and with your strength, your body can handle mine quite easily. Let me think of what might be useful for you, Gaia said as she circled around Shiro, walking around for a short while. Her lips curved up into a smile as she pounced on her back and wrapped her arms around Shiro's neck, securing her position on her back. I have 3 that I think you might like. I can give all 3 to you. The first, life essence absorption. This allows you to absorb life essence from your surroundings and enemies passively if you want it. During a fight, you will be able to constantly drain them and use that to heal yourself. The active effect of this skill allows you to meld your body to the earth for a short period of time, absorbing life essence from the giant reservoir this world holds, and heal you even if you're on the brink of death. It is what I use to keep myself alive, Gaia explained as Shiro nodded her head. The second is a skill called embodiment of nature. This skill also has 2 effects. The first is similar to a berserk skill. You are able to draw out the power of nature and myself to help you in combat. Careful of the backlash since you are using the power of a god. The second effect allows you to sense anything that touches the ground. It's similar to your satellites, but this one allows you to see underground too. Gaia winked since this would give Shiro something akin to Odin's all-seeing eye, but at the same time, not quite. The last skill isn't as good as the other 2, but it's just a helpful passive if anything. Earthen protection. Whenever you're standing on the ground, the earth will shift to protect you no matter what. You can also give this blessing to someone else for a short period of time. Overall, it's just a good passive to have. Gaia shrugged as Shiro nodded her head. Thank you. Shiro smiled since Gaia has done so much for her now. Of course, anything for you. Now shall we talk about marriage? Gaia narrowed her eyes as both Misu and Shiro froze up for a moment. Marriage? Misu widened her eyes as she felt like her brain had just exploded. Just as Gaia mentioned marriage, another tier 8 magic circle appeared as she quickly coughed. Just kidding. Anyways, here's the blessing. Gaia smiled as she leaned forward and kissed Shiro on the cheeks. The moment her crest appeared, Gaia quickly jumped off and waved at Shiro. See you, Gaia grinned. Jumping into her own portal, her tier 8 magic circle disappeared, and so did the second one. Blinking her eyes, Shiro glanced at her system and saw that she had received Gaia's blessing. Gaia's blessing, a blessing from the primordial goddess. This blessing contains 3 effects: life essence absorption, embodiment of nature, earthen protection. Shaking her head, Shiro coughed lightly and glanced back at Misu, who was sitting on the floor. Are you alright? Shiro asked as Misu nodded her head. Gaia wants to marry you? Misu asked slowly as Shiro scratched her hair. Seems so, but I'll be able to make the anchor for you now. Shiro helped her up before walking back to the anchor. Closing her eyes, she clasped her hands together as mana flared. Tier 6 magic circles stacked on top of one another in front of her as blue and gold liquid condensed in the center. Opening her eyes, Shiro conjured up Gaia's crests. Golden radiance filled the room as a pool of divine energy flooded towards the liquid. Furrowing her brows, Shiro reached out with one hand so that she could stop the momentum. She didn't need that much divine energy in the anchor, otherwise it may blow up. Carefully adjusting it so that it flowed slowly, she started to mix the 2 liquids together. She could sense how volatile the liquid would become if the flow of divine energy becomes too much to handle. Retracting most of it back to the crest, she started to condense the liquid into a crystal. Watching the liquid crystallize, Misu could see that the crystal held a golden core with blue crystals surrounding it. Sensing the power it radiated, she knew that it would help speed up everything. ####. After returning to the divine realm, Gaia ran away from Nyx for a few moments before looking back at the screen. The moment the crystal was formed, Gaia felt a slight tug in her divine energy. It was her divine energy being funneled through the crystals to heal the one that Misu wanted to help. Closing her eyes, she sensed that the other target was heavily injured. However, that was not what she was bothered about. What she was bothered about was that the other party was a god. "Who are you?" Gaia questioned with a frown. Hearing this, the other party paused for a moment before turning towards her. "I didn't expect another god to be involved," he muttered with a smile. "I asked you a question. Care to answer?" Gaia narrowed her eyes as her divine energy flared out. "Ahaha, that is true. Who am I?" "Well, I'm a god, an injured one. Sorry to cut our meeting short, but I can't stay around. My only allegiance is with Misu. If she lives, then I'm fine. The young lass you have your eye on seems to be Mrs. Friend, so I won't hurt her, don't worry." He smiled before snapping his fingers. Having their connection forcefully terminated for now, Gaia couldn't help but stumble back for a moment and frowned. "You okay?" Nyx asked with a raised eyebrow. Gaia had suddenly stumbled back without warning, and her expression didn't look too good, so naturally, she would be worried. "Amen? Oh yeah, I'm fine. Seems like Mrs. got a god backing her up." Gaia shook her head. "Is that so? This new age is quite abnormal, isn't it? Gods are popping up left and right. Though to be fair, we were the first ones to do this, since we're sending down quite a few avatars for Shiro." Nyx shrugged. "Do you think it is perhaps the system's way of bringing balance? While our privilege may be higher than other gods, we have been abusing it for a while now." Tartarus asked as Nyx fell silent. Well, setting that aside, now how are the preparations going?" Nyx asked. "Hades has been gathering support, and so far we've gathered quite the army. Even if Zeus and the others find help from other pantheons, we have a good chance of overwhelming their strength. The only problem left is how the system will react. You've seen how it was not too happy last time about us fighting against the Watchmen." Tartarus replied as Nyx and Gaia both sat down. "Sigh, that's true. Plus, we also don't know what's the deal with that woman from last time. Her deepest fear was apparently Shiro, and she is able to access a power much stronger than what we have." Nyx sighed as he remembered the fight from last time. "Until we find out what's the deal with her, it's risky to attack first," Gaia said, resting her chin on her palm. "True, the war will break out soon, so it is inevitable. We will suffer if we attack too soon, but we will also suffer if we wait. They're trying to get rid of us, just like back then." Auranas clicked his tongue. "Yeah, well, if you were more responsible, then that probably won't happen. Considering how Zeus is, there was probably a chance of a coup regardless, but you could have at least been remembered as a nice god." Gaia shrugged. Hearing this, Auranas frowned before staying silent. All right, settle down. What's our main priority right now?" Tartarus calmed them down. "Our main priority is to corner off Zeus' forces so that we can wipe them out, stop their influence from spreading, and seeking help from other pantheons." Auranas grumbled as Tartarus smiled. "Yup, so let's start doing that then. I hope we can end this war before the second half begins. That way, Shiro will have our full support without anyone from our pantheon trying to hinder her. Don't forget about her mom. Hades is helping her out right now, but we need to guarantee her safety in the background." Gaia reminded as they all nodded. ####. After creating the crystal, Shiro sighed and sat on the floor. "Oh, the second time is just as hard as the first." Shiro sighed as her body was now completely drained of divine energy. "Thank you. Is there anything I can do to repay you?" Misu asked as Shiro waved her hand. "It's fine, ahaha. I promised that I would do this after all. Just help me out when I'm in trouble, and it'll be fine." Shiro smiled as Misu felt touched. Helping her to her feet, the two talked about their next steps. "Right now, we have a while until we need to challenge that dungeon with Cyrodiil. I'm going to be looking for a few dungeons to level up in. If we do fight, which we will, having a control mage like you would help a lot. Plus, you're also a queen, so your fighting strength is higher than the average person." Shiro said as Misu nodded. "Well, I do have a bunch of spare time to try to level up, though I won't be able to summon too many undead since they are dead souls brought back for the sake of combat. I don't want to force them to fight if they don't want to. My combat power might be weaker than you expect, though if it is our enemies within the dungeon, I can summon them to battle." Misu reminded as Shiro nodded her head. "That's fine. Our battle in the future would be an invasion by a demigod and his army. If you can convert his army into our allies, then that would be good too. All in all, we just need to reach a good level before the invasion begins. If we're too low level, there won't be much that we can do, and a good majority of the world would be destroyed in front of us." Shiro nodded. "In that case, then just call me if there is a good place to level up. I might have to finish dealing with a queen first since she's been putting pressure on some of my cities. While the city may be connected to Asharia, I still want to end this conflict if possible, have her turn her attention elsewhere." Mrs. said as Shiro tapped her chin. Well, if you want me to help you, I can. It might also put more pressure off you since she's pretty hot-headed from what I know. Shiro offered as Misu blinked her eyes. Oh, you've already done a lot for me. I can't trouble you more than this. Misu waved her hand, but Shiro shook her head. It's fine. There's not much I'm doing anyways. I have my satellites looking for a good place to level up, and some of my staff are checking the feeds to make sure it is accurate. The last place I checked gave me a decent material that can be used for research. Shiro reassured as Misu accepted her help. ####. While Shiro and Misu were talking to one another, a certain queen received a rather interesting piece of news. It's what now? A woman asked in disbelief. The city was ripped from the earth and lifted into the sky where a second city appeared. It was 10 times the size of how big the original city was, and after connecting to one another, it disappeared. The subordinate reported as the Lightning Queen furrowed her brows. So you're telling me that the undead Queen Misu somehow lifted her city up into the sky and disappeared? Yes. The F***CK? Are you sure you didn't see wrong? How the hell can a city just disappear like that? The queen slammed her hand onto her armrest. I'm being honest, Your Highness. I can take you to see for yourself. There is now a large chunk of land missing, and the same goes for some of her other cities. They've all disappeared. Seeing the panic on his face, she understood that he was probably being truthful. Fine, let me go check for myself. Slamming her hand down, lightning wrapped around her body as she shot out of the room. The sound of thunder rumbled in the sky as dark clouds gathered together. Shooting into the center of the clouds, the Lightning Queen disappeared. Traveling through the sky, she soon discovered the large chunk of land that was missing. Bang. Landing on the floor, she walked up and frowned. What the hell? She muttered. Even if she was to try to destroy a city like this, she wouldn't be able to cause this much damage. There may be ruins, but not to the point where not even a single brick was left behind. Plus, the mana that was needed to lift something like that into the sky was nothing to laugh at. Staying silent, she was about to leave when she felt a spike in mana. A Tier 6 magic circle appeared in the sky as 2 figures appeared from the portal. Recognizing one of the figures to be Misu, the Lightning Queen narrowed her eyes and glared at her before turning to the second figure. After hearing about how the city was lifted into the air, she had a slight idea of who it was, but after seeing her in person, she realized her worries were right. The winner of the most recent event, the one who had a floating city behind her on the crest, it was the white-haired devil. To think you would actually make an alliance with another queen. Count me impressed. The Lightning Queen forced a smile while thinking of a way out. However, without saying anything, Shiro raised her hand and clenched it into a fist. Suddenly, the Lightning Queen felt all of the mana drain from the area and widened her eyes in shock. A no-mana zone. The Lightning Queen thought with a frown while quickly backing off. I'm just here to talk. Shiro smiled while walking towards her. What? Why would a talk involve getting rid of the mana in the area? The Lightning Queen asked, forcing a smile. Because you probably wouldn't listen to me otherwise. After all, from my knowledge of you, you are pretty hot-headed. You know what Misa does, but still count it as heresy. She doesn't revive them against their will. She doesn't force them to fight, and she certainly does not do it to torture them. So let's have a talk. Why does this seem heretical to you? Shiro asked as she flickered in front of the Lightning Queen. Even if this area has been turned to a no-mana zone, her physical prowess was still crazy even if she was a mage. Which mage has over 600 million points in strength? Setting aside the fact that her point gain is much higher than the average person due to her class, upgrades, and unique scenarios that had rewarded her greatly, not even an average warrior who put everything into strength could match up to her. Even her weakest stat, defense, was at an abnormal 500 million points. While it may not be much for most of the enemies that she faced, no just any random person could cause her to bleed fast. The Lightning Queen thought to herself and quickly ducked down to avoid her attack. Gritting her teeth, she punched towards Shiro's rib. Bang. Feeling the force rebound back to her body, the Lightning Queen flinched from the pain. What the F***CK? Why is her body so hard? Isn't she supposed to be a mage? She asked herself while quickly retreating away from Shiro. However, the gap couldn't be increased. Shiro was simply faster. Well, what's your answer? Shiro asked as she hooked her leg behind the Lightning Queen and poked her head with a finger, causing her center of gravity to shift, forcing the Lightning Queen to stumble back and collapse to the ground. Shiro looked down at her with a slight smile. Reviving people is disturbing the cycle of life. Of course it's heresy. If they died, then they should stay dead. The Lightning Queen snapped back as her body started to flicker with electricity. Raising her eyebrow, Shiro was a little surprised since this was not mana-based. No, this was more of a racial trait. Watching the lightning travel through her body, Shiro decided to humor her for a bit. So if they died in accident or were killed by something not under their control, you count that as heresy to reunite them with their family? Even if it means the son or daughter is left alone in this world? Shiro asked, taking a step back. Gritting her teeth, the Lightning Queen glared at Shiro. Yes. Dashing forward, her speed was increased explosively. Flickering in front of Shiro, she twisted her body and launched a kick towards her neck. Leaning to the side, Shiro caught her leg with her hand. So if your friends were to die in an accident, you would leave them be rather than bring them back? Shiro asked as the Lightning Queen's eyes flickered for a moment before gritting her teeth. I wouldn't bring them back, she squeezed out through gritted teeth. So if your mother and father were killed by your enemy, you wouldn't bring them back? Shiro asked. At this point, she knew there was something slightly abnormal about her reaction to reviving people. No, the Lightning Queen shouted out, transforming her entire body to lightning. She lashed out towards Shiro. Feeling the electricity running through her body, Shiro could tell that it was trying to paralyze her. Just as she was about to ask her some more questions, Shiro sensed that her no-mana zone was about to run out. Narrowing her eyes, Shiro wanted to restrain her, but she was slippery. If your parents were revived in front of you against their will, what would you do? Releasing a burst of lightning, the Lightning Queen disappeared the moment the no-mana zone was undone. Looking at the charred spot on the ground, Shiro was silent. ####. After finally escaping from the two, the Lightning Queen sat down while panting and gritted her teeth. That talk with Shiro had brought up some old memories. The ones of her when she was younger and back in her original garden. Memories of her mistake. Closing her eyes, she could see the scene of a young girl reviving her parents, only for them to become monsters that almost destroyed a country. Their cries of hatred being unleashed upon her, cursing her actions. The cries of the girl begging for forgiveness. How the girl had to be the one to end the life of her parents. The dead should stay dead. They shouldn't disturb the natural cycle of life, she muttered before standing up. Taking a moment to catch her breath, she left the area. ####. While that talk went smoothly, I'd say. We'll probably get another chance to talk to her in the future. I'll let her think about things for now. Shiro shrugged. While she could find her location with the satellites, she didn't want to force everything on her at once. She'll give the Lightning Queen a moment to digest the conversation. Just in case, though, I'll set a barrier around the border so that the location can be hidden, Shiro said as Misu nodded her head. So what's the plan now? Misu asked. We'll go around looking for a good level-up spot. Get some people that you trust like Essel, and he can level up with us too. We'll be leaving in a month or so after all. Shiro smiled. She wasn't sure how many decent level-up spots there are, but reaching level 900 should be doable if they take a few risks. ####. In the following months, Shiro used all her time to clear dungeons whenever she could with a small party consisting of Nantion, Aram, Kiyomi, Keiko, Helion, Sylvia, Chinyu, Kane, Koji, Li Jian, Een, Atesh, Lysandra, Nimue, Estrella, Izul, Misu, Essel, and a few other subordinates under Misu's control. After the first few times, it became easier to find out where the dungeons were using the satellites. They had a unique signal that was camouflaged, but once it was spotted, all of the dungeons above ground was revealed. While most of them were lower than level 600, it was still good to keep clearing them since high-level monsters were hard to come across in large packs, especially if they wanted to find some over level 700/800. If there were indeed monsters like that, Shiro would be more inclined to bring them to her side than to just kill them. With the dungeons being the main place to level up, Shiro used all of her skills that could increase their EXP, gain the first chance she could. While she could keep track of how many times they've cleared the dungeon this month, she got bored of doing so since it surpassed 4 digits. The good news of clearing this many dungeons was that even if they were lower level, they still got a decent amount of EXP. After 1 month, this was the party's level. Nantion, LVL 820. Aram, LVL 695. Kiyomi, LVL 500. Helion, LVL 700. Keiko, LVL 750. Sylvia, LVL 790. Chinyu, LVL 720. Kane, LVL 500. Koji, LVL 650. Li Jian, LVL 650. Een, LVL 780. Estrella, LVL 770. Misu, LVL 750. Essel, LVL 730. During this month, many have gotten their Tier 6 classes with Koji and Li Jin breaking through the bottleneck that has kept them at the peak of Tier 5 for years. Een found herself leveling up much faster with the benefits her new title has given her. Kiyomi and Kane managed to get to level 500, but weren't able to break through since they were struggling at their quest, much to their dismay. However, Shiro said that it was fine since the rest of the party were making lots of good progress. As for Shiro, while she may not have reached level 900 as she had wished since there were simply too many people that needed to level up, she wasn't far off. From level 765, she managed to level up to 870. There wasn't much to her level except for one skill that she earned after leveling up to 850. Machine Goddess Descent. Your domain of influence spreads out to the world. Everything within range will be converted to nanobots except for living beings. Ambient mana will be under your control, and you become immune to lightning and metal elements. Divinity Rank 1. Cost 50% of Divine Energy. Cooldown 7 days. Duration 10 minutes. Backlash not applicable. With this new skill, she finally obtained something that a demigod should have. She asked Gaia about the divinity rank, and it turns out to be the power of her divinity. Right now it was at rank 1, which is the most basic. A rank 2 divinity skill would push back her current skill, but it was practically impossible for that to happen when facing queens or empresses. After all, divinity rank skills are only owned by gods. In terms of divinity ranks, most standard demigods are rank 1. Gods are rank 2. Powerful gods are rank 3. Exceptional gods are rank 4. Old gods are rank 5, and primordials like Gaia are rank 6. Chaos was on a whole new level, and Gaia said that her divinity would be around rank 7 or 8. After receiving her first divinity grade skill, Shiro noticed a new icon on her stat board. Besides her class, there was now a divinity rank 1. Name: Shiro. Race: Spirit Demigod. Title: Expert Monster. 13, 290/100, 000 humans killed. Fratricide: Creator of the Frozen Hell series. Incomplete. Creator of Een-style Azura's Path. Seeker of Truths. Revolutionary. Celestial Empress EX. Benevolent Saint EX. Error code. Genocide. One of a kind. Virtue of Fortitude. Young Demigod. Goddess of Protection. Merciful Goddess. Young Goddess. 50% boost currently. Leader of Asharia. Tainted Shell. Realm Breaker. Level: 870. Class: Nanotech Demigoddess. Demigod. Divinity Rank 1. HP: 246, 750, 000, 000, /246, 750, 000, 000. MP: 752, 500, 000, 000, /752, 500, 000, 000. STR: 1,090,000,000. VIT: 1,410,000,000. INT: 4,300,000,000. AGI: 1,250,000,000. DEX: 1,305,000,000. DEF: 1,135,000,000. Unassigned points: 0. Attunements: Cosmic Ice, Tier 6. Apocalyptic Lightning, Tier 6. Stygian Steel, Tier 6. Astral Rift, Tier 6. Augmented with Calamity's Will. Void Star, Tier 6. Celestial Star, Tier 6. Aspect of Fire, Tier 7. Boreal Wind, Tier 6. Tectonic Quake, Tier 6. Aspect of Water, Tier 7. Aspect of Life, Tier 7. Tier: Nanotech, Tier 7 Demigod. Skills: Error, Extraction, Nanotech Demigoddess. Elemental Breath, Celestial Mirage, Force of Elements. Demigod Raiment, Tier 6 Element Magic. Rift Strider EX. Demigoddess Domain. Demigod Skill. Rebirth, Legendary Elemental Mastery. Spirit Assistance EX. Divine Court Appointment. Demigoddess Blessing. Shared Burden. Nanotech Engineering Tier 6. Analysis, True Spirit Nature. Divine Gardens. Divine Presence. Divinity of Nanobots. March of the Goddess. Divine Insight of God. Protection of the Goddess. Boon of the Demigoddess. Machine Goddess Descent. Frozen Hell Series. Frozen Slumber. Azure Hell Fire. Borealis Lance. Frozen Chandelier. Ancient Healing Arts. Fire of Life. Grace. Path of Ascendance. Phantom Path. Celestial Path. Pandora's Requiem. Reaper. Limit Break. Origin. War Saint. Divine Enchantment. Current Blessings. Asteria. Athena, Aphrodite, Ares, Artemis, Hades, Hermes, Poseidon, Nyx, Argus, Gaia. World-class magic. Requiem of the Dead. Grand Support Class Magic. Requiem of the Demigoddess. Origin spells. Time Flux. Other. Mini-map. Inspection. Disguise. Combust. Heavenly Constellation. Aurora. Chimera Arts. Hollow Deceit. Kitoma. Divine Language. Wrath of Stars. Eyes of the Gorgon. Miracle. Sigil of Night. Encroaching Darkness. Skill Scholar. Item Master. Limit Focus. Blessing of Chaos. Soul Siphon. Divine Runic Needles. Devour. After a month of constant dungeon clearing, her HP and mana have effectively doubled, while each of her stats are now above the 1 billion point threshold. Due to the nature of her divine chord upgrades, her party members could roughly guess what her stats were, and they couldn't believe a mage could have over 1 billion points in strength and 1 billion points in defense. If anything, she could act as a tank and no one would notice. Since a month had passed, Shiro was thinking that it was about time to talk to the system once more, but not just yet. There were more questions she wanted to ask, but most importantly, it would be better if Cyrodiil was here so that she can also ask a few questions herself. Currently, they were in a large-scale level 700 dungeon, and everyone was just cleaning up. They had already killed the boss, so it was just the grunts left. Feeling some movement beneath her, Shiro glanced down with boredom and snapped her finger. Suddenly, the ground hardened with nanobots and split apart, revealing the monster that wanted to ambush her from below. Waving her hand, the ground slammed shut as if it was the mouth of a beast, causing blood to splatter everywhere, but there was a barrier around Shiro, preventing the blood from staining her clothes. We should be finished up now. I think it's about time we make our way back. Kiona said that she wanted us to prepare for an expedition to see where the Shadow Empress was. If we can deal with her before Rokarn, then that'll be great. Shiro called out, as everyone nodded. I don't think we'll have time to deal with her once Rokarn's invasion begins. Nimue said as she had returned to Shiro's mana realm after a short period of staying outside. Izul was with her, and they would occasionally step out, but not too much. Unlike Adi and Estrella, who enjoyed the outside world a lot, these two were more reclusive. That's true, Shiro agreed, while watching everyone pack up and clear out the dungeon. Upon leaving, Shiro stretched her body. During this month, she had also been working on healing her trauma. Previously, she needed to hold on to Nantion every so often to calm her nerves, but she's managed to improve to the point that as long as everyone was in her sight, she'd be fine. If not, then she'll just need to see Nantion every 30 minutes or so. After that 30 minutes, she could still fight, but her strength would begin to deteriorate. It wasn't too bad, though, since not many fights would drag past 30 minutes. Glancing back at the dungeon gate plaza that she had created, Shiro couldn't help but laugh since she had effectively kidnapped every available dungeon gate and placed it in this area. With how big Asharia had become, Shiro had added a second floor to the whole place. Connected to the main tower was a platform that had support pillars with teleport circles inside to send them to the second floor. The second floor was made up of all the dungeon gates she could find. Most of them were over level 300, but there were still a few low-level dungeons. This made it so that the adventurers in this city could still level up without venturing out. This included Misu's dungeon, and as she had described, nothing much happened in the dungeon. It was just a scenario dungeon where they were in the middle of a war and had to help the forces of light. Pretty standard. However, one of the dungeons was rather interesting since it was linked to a world that had already begun research on mana-infused guns. Compared to Earth, their progress was rather good. But compared to Arya and their research, it still paled in comparison. Revel was also enjoying his time recuperating his wounds and found himself enjoying the internet cafe that Shiro had set up in the middle of the city. He now mostly visits to play some games and chat around without anyone knowing that he was a level 900 Leviathan. Speaking of computers, Kiona has become a neat for good now. She spent all of her time on the computer, relaying her orders to Safi and her other subordinates. She seems to have found her groove playing real-time simulation games that was similar to what they were experiencing right now. Unfortunately for her, she hasn't won a single game yet. The closest she got was third place, but that was it. There wasn't much movement from the other queens either. Things were pretty silent for the majority of the month she spent leveling up. In addition to everything that had happened, she had also created a research base in the North Pole for the strange crystals that were produced there. So far, they discovered that the crystal would only react negatively if it was used as a weapon. If they were to use it as an amplifier for her anchor, the chances of it backfiring was almost zero. Therefore, to compensate for that, Shiro had installed modules that would cause the crystals to self-destruct the moment they showed signs of going berserk. As for the egg in the bottom, no one had a clue of what it was. The amount of mana it needed was crazy, and the fact that it was still incubating after all this time showed that whatever was going to be born could possess the power of a peak tier 6. Maybe even higher, but the odds were low. But now that the crystals could be used, Shiro made some adjustments to all of her anchors along with Misu's anchors, making it so that her main city could be moved to Asharia, while keeping the weapons, defensive measures, and teleportation. It wasn't an exaggeration to call Asharia a weaponized country at this point with its size. Looking around the dungeon plaza that had countless adventurers going in and out, Shiro couldn't help but smile, since this allowed them to stretch their body and exercise. Plus, the risks of lives being lost in the dungeon was quite small with a breakthrough item that Aram constructed with the help of Estrella and Helion. It was an emergency escape stone that would send them to a space in Estrella's pocket dimension where they can get help or get healed. Once they've recovered, they can continue. With everything they've set up, clearing dungeons became much safer. "What's your plan now?" Nantion asked as he walked next to Shiro. "I need to go talk to Kiona, since we need to deal with the Shadow Empress. Now that we've taken some time to level up, it should be a good time to sort things out before the invasion." Shiro replied as Nantion nodded. "How's the monitoring with Theria?" "Same as usual. She's too hard to keep track of even with the satellite system. We don't know where to look, and she's managed to hide her traces well." Nantion shook his head with a sigh. "It would be great if there was a way for us to find a link, but unfortunately that link hasn't been discovered yet." "I see, no matter. Hopefully, we'll see her at the next event. If we don't, then not much else we can do. Let's just sit back and wait for now," Shiro said as she created a portal for the two of them. Teleporting to Revel's hangar, Shiro could see the mighty Leviathan resting right now. "How are you feeling?" Shiro asked as Revel opened one of his eyes. "Not too bad. My soul is recovering slowly, but it's almost done. I should be able to fight properly in a week or two." Revel smiled as Shiro nodded her head. "Speaking of which, you should have seen the reaction of one of my opponents. She thought she could outsmart me with the placement of her units, but it was a trap all along. Ha ha ha. The moment she thought she won, she lost all of her units in one turn." Revel grinned as Shiro chuckled. Since she was the one who created the internet cafe, she could naturally access the servers. Unfortunately for Kiona, the barrier blocking her from reaching top 3 was actually this Leviathan. He had found himself a hobby of stopping her. Talking with Revel for a little, Shiro left him alone to heal for now. The attraction of games is quite strong, isn't it? Both Revel and Kiona are addicted. Nantion smiled as Shiro nodded her head. "That's true. Anyways, are you ready?" "I'll be taking us to Kiona," Shiro asked. During this month, she had a few more peace talks with Kiona, and the two agreed on letting Shiro install a teleport gate to her city so that she could travel back and forth with ease. After her first display of power, Kiona understood that if Shiro wanted to destroy her city, it was a simple task. There was no need to work in the shadows, hence, she was fine with her placing a teleport gate. Plus, it made it easier for Kiona to come to Asharia and shop for the latest hardware. Teleporting outside of Kiona's castle, Shiro entered without any problems since the guards were long used to it by now. Seeing the fatigued receptionist and workers in the castle, Shiro couldn't help but feel pity for them since she had turned their queen into a NEET. Seeing Safi carrying some documents, Shiro gave her a small wave. Miss Shiro, sorry about the lack of a welcome." Safi apologized while forcing a smile. "It's fine. How's Kiona?" "I was hoping to talk to her about the problem regarding the Shadow Empress today," Shiro asked as Safi's smile twitched. "She has just started a new game, so I'm not sure. But she's in her room as usual." Nodding her head, Shiro helped Safi out a little by making a drone to help her for the day before walking to Kiona's room. Knocking on the door, Shiro didn't hear a response and opened the door. The moment she saw what was inside, Shiro covered Nantion's eyes. "I suppose I should turn away." Nantion smiled as Shiro nodded her head. Watching Nantion take a step back, Shiro entered. Sitting in front of the computer, Kiona was dressed in a simple, oversized shirt and her underwear. She had her legs crossed while tapping away at the keyboard. Her blanket was barely hanging on as she simply wrapped it on her shoulders like a cape. Seeing what Kiona was like, Shiro facepalmed. "This was the Ice Queen. If you're bringing food, leave it on the side," Kiona said as she didn't even bother to look up. Cough. Clearing her throat, Shiro forced Kiona to look up. Glancing up, Kiona paused the moment she saw it was Shiro. After all, Shiro was the one that could take everything from her. Mind letting me get dressed? Kiona asked with a small blush since she was in her underwear and a shirt right now. Sure. How long do you need? 5 minutes. Nodding her head, Shiro took a step out. Waiting in the corridor with Nantian, Shiro opened her mouth. Maybe I should take away her computer for a bit. She sighed. PFT. I feel like you've picked up Kiona as a kid now. Nantian laughed since Shiro was acting like a mother who wanted to take away their kids' games. Bah. I already have Ian, Addie, and Lysandra to take care of. I don't need any more kids right now. Plus, Ian is already a handful. Shiro rolled her eyes. I heard you said that you wanted to take away the computer for a bit. Please don't, Kiona said as she popped her head out from behind the door. Glancing over, Shiro could see that Kiona was still half-dressed. Go, get dressed, then we can talk. Waiting for a little longer, Kiona invited them in. This time she was dressed properly and sitting on the bed while offering 2 seats for Shiro and Nantian. So what did you want to talk about? Kiona asked as she adjusted herself so that she seemed more like a queen. I wanted to talk about the Shadow Empress. Since we're going to be challenging a raid in 2 weeks, I wanted to take care of the Shadow Empress before I leave. Shiro said as Kiona nodded her head. Right, the Shadow Empress. I have mentioned before that I'm still trying to track down her location. While we haven't discovered her exact location, we've found some tracks. Since she has fallen, there are some distinct marks that are left behind by her skills. Kiona said as her expression was serious. Pulling out a few pictures, Shiro could see that there was corrosion on the damage left behind which emitted a black aura. Her attacks are becoming more frequent now. After tracking her for a month, it seems like she's been traveling towards the southern section of the world. Turning her screen towards Shiro and Nantian, Kiona brought up a map of the world and revealed marks of where the tracks have been found. Looking at the map, Shiro could see that it was practically a straight line down towards the south. The last time she had checked the South Pole from her satellites, she couldn't find anything strange like the egg in the North Pole, so she didn't pay it much attention. But if the Shadow Empress was making her way there, then she might need to reevaluate her thoughts on the South Pole. There is very little divergence to her path, so we did think about maybe sending a few scouts to intercept. The scouts have doppelganger skills, so their lives won't be in danger, but even if we try to be there ahead of her, we couldn't spot her at all. Kiona shook her head. Well, that does make sense. After all, shadows are everywhere. If she's the Shadow Empress, then traveling through shadows would be rather standard. I'll set down a few drones on the way there to see if I can spot her. Otherwise, I think it's best for me to look at the tracks that she leaves behind. That way I can find her with my skill. If Shiro can get her hands on the Shadow Empress's tracks, the blessing that Argus gave her would help her track the Empress down. Sure, I can show you the way. Speaking of which, do you know the owner of this account? He really is insufferable. He can get first place, but he always makes sure that he is in third to block me. Kiona pouted as she pointed towards Revel's account. Scratching her hair, Shiro nodded her head before opening her mouth. You can figure that out eventually. Our focus is the Shadow Empress, okay? Shiro reminded her. Hearing this, Kiona nodded her head. Talking for a little longer, Shiro controlled her satellite to send down a drone so that it can act as a teleport anchor for her. Once she sensed that the anchor was ready, she opened a portal and arrived at the most recent mark. Damn, that really is convenient, Kiona muttered. With Shiro's satellite system, she was able to send a node to anywhere in the world and teleport there in an instant. She essentially had fast travel with every new node she unlocked. Right now, the 3 of them were in the middle of a forest. Seeing the trees corroded to their roots, Shiro glanced at the black aura being radiated and furrowed her brows. Even though she was just sensing the residual energy, she felt chills down her body and knew that the Shadow Empress was long gone. Conjuring up some nanobots, she collected a sample so that she could use it as a tracker. The moment her nanobots came into contact with the black aura, Shiro felt her shock go through her body. A dark presence trying to grip at her heart, which disappeared quickly. Taking a step back, Shiro had cold sweat down her back. Are you okay? Nantian asked as he quickly rushed over. I just didn't expect this kind of reaction from the aura. I'll need to take some special precautions when it comes to tracking her down. Shiro replied as she didn't attempt to collect the sample a second time. Instead, she conjured up several pillars around the sample and scanned it as it is. That way, it didn't attack her again. Scanning the sample, she discovered that the aura of the Shadow Empress was highly volatile. The moment you come into contact with the tracks, the corruption will attempt to forcefully make you fall. Since she had been close to falling a few times, Shiro had built up a small resistance that allowed her to forcefully break from whatever tried to make her fall. Otherwise, she might been feeling the effects of the corruption. Activating the Argus satellite system, she started to track down where the aura originated from. Closing her eyes, she could see a trail leading towards the south. Zooming in, she spotted a faint figure flickering through the shadows. The moment she focused on her, the woman snapped her head up and made eye contact with Shiro. What a sharp sixth sense. It's not any worse than mine. Shiro thought to herself. You might want to be extra careful with this one. She doesn't feel like a fallen should. It's more volatile. Not sure what to think of this, but keep your guard up. Nimue warned as Shiro nodded her head. Before she could even look to track down the Shadow Empress, Shiro felt her aura flare up as the shadows around them started to move. Stay away from the shadows, Shiro called out as the three of them jumped into the air. Watching all of the shadows in the forest swell up before transforming into a giant beast with a woman appeared on the head, Shiro couldn't help but feel a headache appearing since coming into contact with this beast is advised against. The moment you do, there was a chance of being invaded by a dark presence that tries to make you fall. Looking at the woman, Shiro could see long flowing black hair and a pair of purple eyes that bore into her. Nip him, LVL 990 Fallen Empress of Shadows. Are you trying to stop my goal as well? Nip him asked as the size of the monster beneath her continued to grow, fusing with all of the shadows within this forest. What is your goal? For an empress to fall, the goal is surely something rather difficult to accomplish. Shiro asked as she gestured for both Nantion and Kiona to prepare for combat, but hold for now. My goal, what is my goal? Nip him muttered as she clutched her head. That's right, my goal, the Raven Bastard. He's in the south. I must kill the Raven Bastard. Don't get in my way. Nip him gritted her teeth as hundreds of black tentacles shot out of the ground. Widening her eyes, Shiro slammed her hands together. Remembering the hexagonal pattern that created the strongest shield, she forced her mana to condense into thick pieces of ice that slammed against the ground. Asterisk bang. As the tentacles collided with the ice, they started to freeze immediately as ice traveled towards Nip him. Try not to kill her just yet. If she's talking about ravens, it could be the strange figure that's been calling himself the merchant. He's a variable that we need to deal with, so having her help would be good. Shiro shouted out while Nantion and Kiona spread out. Wait, she wants to kill him. Before we had our non-aggression agreement, he had been trying to get me to use a percentage of my authority to purchase his offers. I'm not sure what his goal is, but he's been collecting authorities from other queens. Kiona shouted out as Shiro furrowed her brows. If she remembered correctly, authority of a queen is what allows them to place down more anchors, absorb some power from her followers, and improve their strength. It is also what lets their element stand above the rest. If the merchant has been collecting these authorities, then is he trying to gain all of their powers? Shiro thought with a frown. Maybe, but right now the problem is Nip him. She's out of her mind right now. Nimue warned as the ice started to corrode. Dropping the shield, Shiro condensed an orb of energy in her hand and threw it in the air above this giant monster that Nip him had created. Nantion, Shiro shouted out as Nantion nodded his head. Aiming his palm toward the sky, mana gathered around him as a tier 6 magic circle appeared, stacking on top of one another. Once enough energy was gathered, he slammed his hand down as a pillar of light descended from the heavens. Activating her own orb of energy, a giant layer of ice appeared as the uneven surface started to refract the light from Nantion's attack, splitting one ray into thousands. Asterisk TSS. Seeing the monster being burnt by the attack, Kiona admired the strength of these two and wondered what she could do. Closing her eyes, she curled her lips into a grin. If anything, she can limit how many shadows are in the forest. Copying from Shiro's idea of refracting light, Kiona clasped her two hands together, creating thousands of ice shards throughout the forest. Focusing the light of the sun into the forest, she illuminated it as much as possible, erasing a large majority of the shadows. Suddenly, the beast started to shrink as Nip him frowned. Clicking her tongue with annoyance, she pushed her hand out, and two portals appeared. Black mist flowed out of the portal, covering the forest and letting her monster recover its original size. Before Shiro or Nantion could attack her, her figure faded into the darkness on the monster's back. She left. Shiro frowned as her speed in the shadows was extremely fast. Since she was still traveling to the south, she wanted to avoid another confrontation if possible. Let her and the Raven Merchant fight one another. However, they still needed to deal with this monster in front of them. Judging by its size, which is slowly decreasing now that Niphim has left, Shiro knew that it would disappear in due time. But the longer it stayed, the more corruption it brought to the world. The forest that was peaceful had now almost completely wilted with the ground drained of nutrients. Black wood and cracked earth. Let's back off for a bit. I have my tracker on the Empress so I can keep an eye on her. If the monster loses its targets, it should calm down and slowly disappear, Shiro said as she camouflaged the three of them. Watching the monster stay in the same place, Shiro sighed in relief. How are we supposed to deal with her? Any direct contact and she'll try to corrupt us. Even though it was small, I definitely felt it trying to make me fall when I attacked. Nantion asked as Shiro nodded her head. She felt it too. I don't know, but we'll have to let the Raven Merchant sort it out. The best case scenario would be killing the two of them at once. But if we can help Niphim break out of her fallen status, that would be good as well. If it does get down to it, I don't mind using a charge of my skill to ask the system about this, Shiro said as Nantion nodded his head. Once the monster completely disintegrated, Shiro looked at the destroyed land and shook her head. Waving her hand, mana flared from her body as she was going to repair this place, revitalize everything, and clear the effects of the corruption. With her resistance, this should be an easy task when also paired with some divine energy. Slowly, the dull grass regained its lush green color. The leaves appeared once more, and the trees had their wood repaired. Any signs of the monster ever being here disappeared, and the forest regained its previous luster. ####. Meanwhile, wandering around in a temple, a figure paused in his steps, and his lips curled up. No, 3 people. 3 people are after my head today. So lively. I should pack up before they arrive, otherwise it might be rather embarrassing, displaying my experiments like this. He chuckled darkly as he walked up to one of the queens strapped to a table. Her eyes were dull, and her body was surgically opened. A strange crystal could be seen being attached to her inside, while the flesh started to pulse. There wasn't just one queen either. If one was to look behind her, there were a few being hung up by hooks, having their body opened up from the middle. Opening his mouth, the Raven Merchant pulled something out before placing it inside the queen's body. Suddenly, her eyes flickered back to life as he started to sew the opening shut. Looking at the forest that has now regained its colors, Shiro nodded in satisfaction. Right then, where is she? Shiro muttered. This time, she wasn't going to directly scan Niphim so that she would begin combat again. Brining up the map, she could see the tracker that she had previously placed on Niphim blink periodically. She had placed this after scanning her for the first time. Unlike her normal tracking methods, this one was special. It was a rune that attached itself to her aura. Once the satellites lock onto you, this rune will appear, and it would be hard for you to break yourself free from it. Unlike the Trickster Queen, not many can change their aura, so this would work almost 100% of the time. It even tracks them through the different realms since it's made using divine runes. Seeing that her speed had increased, Shiro could tell that she was in a hurry after their last fight. Shall we follow? Nantion asked as Shiro thought about it for a moment. Maybe, but not yet. We'll see how things go and see if we can find out why she became fallen. ####. Dashing through the shadows. Niphim had cold sweat on her forehead as she needed to rush towards the south quickly. Gritting her teeth, she continued to dive through the shadows. I need to hurry, she muttered as her vision blurred. Feeling her body freeze up, she was expelled from the shadows and thrown onto the floor. Gah! Crashing against the ground. She could feel her insides twist and churn as she felt something travel up her throat. Asterisk cough. Coughing it up, a black goo splattered against the floor and started to squirm. Flinching in disgust, Niphim clenched her fist, and the shadows disposed of the black goo. Wiping the corners of her mouth, she took a few deep breaths before continuing. She needed to put an end to everything. That man's goals, his ambitions, everything. She needed to stop it. Traveling through the shadows once more, she remembered how things were like back then. He was a small deity that ruled over a unique shadow plane back in her world. After she became the Shadow Queen, she naturally obtained his favor. From then on, they worked together closely to win the new age, but as a queen, it was difficult for her to match against the Empress that dominated the top. Then he came to her with a suggestion, a surgery. He wanted to help her reach the Empress status so that she could get the power she had always desired. Back then, after working together for such a long time, she trusted him. In fact, deep down, she knew that she loved him. Everything he did for her. All of his sacrifices, all of his worries were all for her. She had thought that he wouldn't do anything to harm her, so she agreed. When the first procedure was done, she didn't feel a thing. Her connection to shadows improved, and so did her connection to him, since he was the god of the shadow plane. After this surgery, she started to win more. Defeat the queens that came her way, but it still was lacking compared to the empress. He had explained that this surgery wasn't a one-step process. It was many, so she agreed to the second, then the third, and so on. She knew that he was doing something in the dark that he didn't tell her, but she didn't question him since his motives was to help her. Or at least that's what it seemed like. Until one day, she watched her skin split apart, and a black substance leaked from her body. Horrified by what she saw, she quickly healed herself, thinking that it was just the after effects of her battles. She obtained the Empress title, but felt no joy, since she discovered that her body was indeed collapsing from the inside out. She figured that it was probably the surgery, so she confronted him about it, but all he had to say was, "Ah, you found out. I'm surprised you kept at it for so long. I'm impressed." His nonchalance sent a shock through her mind as he played around with his tools. To make an empress is not easy. Their authority is much higher than a normal queen. What a normal queen considers to be 100% of her authority is just a fraction of the authority owned by an empress. At first, my idea was to infuse your body with the essences of my shadow plane to increase your power. It worked, but only for a short time. So I thought to myself, what else can I do? I know there was a way to obtain a portion of a queen's authority through contract. So I became a seller. I sold portions of your authority in return for theirs, obtained the things that a queen wants, and offered it for their authority. Then when the time came, I enhanced your body so that you could withstand all of this. He spoke without turning around. Then you obtained the Empress title that you've always wanted, and I obtained my breakthrough. But your body was unstable. I was unsure of how long you can hold on for, but it was much longer than I expected, so I started experimenting. See how far I can take this. I have tried the same experiment on others, but they simply couldn't compare to what you could do, so I chose the perfect candidate in my mind. Your sister, Arnia, your physique is similar to yours as your sister's. Her trust in me is the same as yours. He curled his lips into a smile. Absolutely delightful. And my theories were correct. All of my ideas, my experiments produced not one, but two empresses. This time, she is more stable. Well, her body is. Her mind, not so much. He chuckled, stepping aside to reveal Arena strapped to the stable with her body open, displaying a crystalline core implanted where her heart should be. Arnia, Chimera Empress. While she isn't a queen, she managed to become a Chimera Empress. It makes sense though. Chimeras are a fusion of many things. While I don't know how well she can use her abilities, I look forward to the future. As for you, I'm more curious now. What will happen if an empress falls? So I prepared a little gift. Revealing his workshop, Niphim could see all of the ones she held dear being operated on. All of them were either strapped to a table or dismembered, their eyes extracted, body hollowed, and limbs replaced. Collapsing on the ground, Niphim could feel her heart being crushed as she kept questioning why. However, the man only looked at her with disappointment. Not enough, huh? Maybe this will help you. Clapping his hands, all of the bodies in the workshop started to thrash around as screams of agony rang out. Tearing the hooks, pins, and scalpels from their bodies, they looked around in panic before seeing Niphim. Hearing all of them attempt to call out to her, she backed off in fear. They didn't understand her panic, the fear in her eyes, the tears that rolled down her cheek. All of them were confused until they looked down and froze in horror. One by one, they charged towards her as their bodies were beyond their control. Their howls, pleading for help, echoed in Niphim's ears. Their twisted faces and muted bodies twisted and morphed while attacking her. Remembering to this point, Niphim held her head and stumbled in her step. Her memories were incomplete. They continued to fade day after day. She no longer remembered their connection to her, except for Arnia, her sister. All she knows is that after that day, she became fallen, drifting from one new age to another, forever looking to put an end to the Raven Merchant, but never being able to find him. Finally, after searching for so long, the connection between her and his divinity resonated. She knew he was here, in this world. She also knew that Arnia was here, but every time they have met, it was always combat. No matter what, Arnia would begin to react negatively and attack her as though there can only be one of them in the world. Such a reaction, Niphim figured that it was probably Arnia's hate for her, hate for not being able to save her. So she was going to end all of this. She'll kill the Raven Merchant, and what she helped start. She'll put an end to everything while she still had the chance. Continuing to travel towards where his divinity could be felt, Niphim finally arrived in the frozen landscape of the far south. Seeing nothing in the horizon, she scoffed as she knew his habits. Slamming her hand down, a line of shadow shot into the distance before splitting the land in two, revealing a building beneath the frozen surface. Walking down, she was now in front of a set of doors with a familiar design. Pushing it open, she experienced the feeling of déjà vu. A familiar man with his back to her, the operating table, and the test subjects. Welcome. How long has it been now? Quite a few years since the last I remembered. The raven merchant curled his lips into a twisted smile. More than a few years. But even after all of this time, you still haven't changed, you disgusting F***ck. Niphim hissed as she slammed her hand down. All of the shadows in the room twisted and shot towards him, but he was composed. Without moving from his spot, he only smiled. Before the shadows could pierce his body, they froze in mid-air, causing Niphim to click her tongue. You forget. I made you. Your powers, your status, everything. I made all of it. Do you really think the shadows of an empress can reach me? A god. The raven merchant laughed as Niphim gritted her teeth. If shadows don't work, then I have other options. After what happened, I obtained stronger powers, she shouted out, running towards him as a trail of black mist emanated from her body. The power of being fallen? It's nothing but a bit of corruption. I've had plenty myself. He grinned, opening a part of his coat to reveal a pulsing black mass that wriggled around after being exposed to the air. Widening her eyes, Niphim ignored it and continued her attack. Swiping her hand out, she created a spear before piercing the ground and vaulting herself towards him. Black armor appeared around her as she cleaved down with a sword. Asterisk, bang. Once again, something blocked her attempt to attack as the queen that was just on the table now blocked her strike with her hand that was harder than the sword. Ready to protect the master so soon. How obedient. The raven merchant chuckled while patting the queen's head. Antania LVL 800 Hybrid Empress. Seeing that another empress was manufactured, Niphim felt a sting in her heart. Who was she? Niphim asked as she grabbed Antania's arms and kicked her jaw, forcing her body up. Hearing no response, Niphim slammed her foot down and shattered the tiling. I asked who was she. Who the hell did you trick with your deceit? Speak, Raven. Niphim shouted out while slamming her hand down. A web of shadows shot out as it tried to collapse the building, but was halted with a single wave of the raven's fingers. Who was she? Ha ha. Well, she's just like you. She was someone who wanted power, so I gave her it. She experienced despair after seeing what Shiro and Cyrodiil were capable of, so I helped her. Look, she is now an empress just like you. But unlike you, she doesn't have a main focus. No, she has many. Lots of authorities that I've collected through small trades. And this is one of them. His lips curled up as he waved his finger. Suddenly, Antania's body started to move in strange ways, like a pullet that had no limit to her range of motion. Adjusting herself in midair, she slammed her hand down and 3 magic circles appeared. All of them were tier 6 as 3 new mana signals appeared. Summoning. Niphim muttered before clasping her hands together. The shadows in the room broke free of their 2-dimensional restraints and stabbed towards her, piercing her body. However, she transformed into a puddle of blood before fixing herself. In that short period of time, 3 figures dropped down to the floor and slashed towards her. Widening her eyes, Niphim pushed her hand down. Black shadows wrapped around her into a dome and warded off the offense, but Antania broke through the gaps, punching her in the stomach. Holding back the urge to throw up, Antania slammed her arm into the ground to prevent her from being flung out of the building. Tugging a strand of shadow from the ground, the 4 figures in front of her felt their bodies halt as the shadow was connected to them. Biting her lip, Niphim narrowed her eyes as black blood trailed down her mouth, but it was fine. Using her spare hand, she got a bit of the blood and wiped it on the shadow she was holding. Suddenly, a black aura shot out, covering Antania and her summons. Using the attributes of your corruption. Nice choice. But I did design her to face off against you, so you think I would forget about your main weapon? The raven smiled as purple and gold sigils appeared on Antania's body, cleansing her of the aura. Divinity. Niphim called out in shock since she was familiar with this radiance. Bingo. Suddenly, Niphim felt a blade pierce her chest as she slowly looked down. A single shadow blade erupted from her chest as she coughed up a mouthful of black blood. Following the first blade, more and more exploded from her body as she collapsed on the floor. You're not the only one to play with shadows, Niphim. What you can do, she can do better. And what you can't do well, she can do. Dashing forward, Antania and her 3 summons conjured up floating blades created from a crystal-like material and pierced her body, pinning Niphim to the ground. She is a lot better than your sister. After she went rogue, I figured that I needed to make sure they're more obedient, though it wasn't too much of a loss. After all, I was attempting to do that with your sister. Her sacrifice as a subject allowed me to perfect my experiments. Sooner or later, your sis should become brain dead. She has been regressing in terms of mental age. Even with all that power, there is not much she can do. The raven laughed while Niphim glared at him. Her aura flared, but all of her power was being absorbed by the crystals, making them grow. These are strange crystals I found in the far north. While I was unable to do much with them, I was able to embed some of their powers with the authority belonging to the Crystal Queen. Once these are in your body, they'll continue to drain you of your life force and mana until nothing is left. If I could make you fall to corruption harder, I would. But this is unfortunately your limit. You've lost all use for me, Niphim. It'll be time to dispose of you unless you can show me more. Weren't you always the one who liked to impress me? I'm giving you another chance. The raven called out with a smile. Gritting her teeth, Niphim started to slowly stand up as the crystals grew on her body. Grabbing the crystals, she pulled them out, ignoring the injuries that she was sustaining. The same black goo that was inside her body started to repair her wounds as the raven raised an eyebrow in surprise. Using your own life force as fuel before the crystals drain you up. That's pretty good, but how many years have you lost now? 50? 60? Does it matter if I can kill you? Niphim said coldly as a black and red aura erupted from her body. Disappearing from her spot, she appeared next to the raven with a swirl of black mass in her hands. Pulling back his hood, the raven revealed his face, which caused Niphim to widen her eyes in shock. This hesitation was enough for Antania to grab her by the ankles and slam her against the ground. PFT, ahahaha. After all these years, you still can't harm your sister. The raven laughed as he had changed his appearance to look like Arnia for a moment. It was the same back then, and it is the same now. Even if you can kill your family when they were transformed, you still can't lay a hand on your sister. What were her last words before she went crazy? All right. It was cursing you to her last breath. Should I act that out for you with her voice? The raven asked as his voice shifted to that of Arnia's. Hearing that voice, Niphim felt her heart get crushed by her guilt of not being able to do anything for Arnia. You're not her. Don't you dare copy her voice and appearance. Niphim shouted. Leaping up from the floor, she grabbed Antania by the head and ripped her throat out with her mouth before throwing her aside. With a clear path to the raven, Niphim looked like a savage beast with blood dripping from her mouth. Stomping down, she charged towards him as he transformed once more into Arnia. Flinching a little, Niphim continued her attack until he opened his mouth. Big sis, how could you do this? Hearing the same voice of pain that haunted her, Niphim gritted her teeth and pierced the raven's chest. My, how heartless. Literally considering the fact that I replaced it with a crystal. But to think you would kill your sister like that, even if it's just an illusion. TSK. If Arnia saw that, she would be sad. The raven smiled as Niphim collapsed on one knee. Her aura dimmed as she couldn't keep burning away the years of her life like this. Each second she burned was roughly 10 years of her life. Perhaps, but I know that deep down, Arnia would want me to kill you so that we can end you for good. Stop more victims from appearing. Niphim glared as a figure suddenly appeared behind the raven. Well said. Shiro curled her lips into a grin. Needles suddenly appeared and pierced into the raven, stopping him from teleporting as chains held him in place.